Why do we trust our gut instincts, even when they're wrong? Why do we overanalyze some decisions but rush through others? Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, answers these questions in his groundbreaking book, Thinking Fast and Slow. He reveals that our brain has two systems constantly shaping our decisions. One fast and instinctive, the other slow and deliberate. In this episode, we'll explore the key insights from this book that can change the way you think and make decisions forever. Part 1. The two systems. Our brain operates using two systems that govern how we think and make decisions. Daniel Kahneman calls them System 1 and System 2, and they couldn't be more different. System 1 is the brain's autopilot. It works fast, operates instinctively, and handles most of our daily decisions without breaking a sweat. It's the system that helps you recognize a familiar face in a crowd or step back instantly when you see a car speeding toward you. It's intuitive, emotional, and doesn't require much effort. Think of it as the impulsive friend who makes snap judgments, sometimes without all the facts. For example, imagine seeing a bright red sale sign in a store. Before you even stop to think, System 1 nudges you toward the rack. It assumes that a sale means a good deal without questioning if you actually need what's being sold. This quick reaction is helpful in many situations, like avoiding danger, but it's not always reliable when making complex decisions. Now, let's meet System 2. This is the brain's deep thinker. It's slower, more analytical, and takes over when things get complicated or when System 1 can't handle the task. Solving a math problem, planning a trip, or making a difficult life decision are all tasks for System 2. Unlike System 1, it requires focus and effort. You know that feeling when you're concentrating so hard that you can't tolerate any noise? That's System 2 at work. Let's compare them. Say you're solving a simple question. What's 2 plus 2? System 1 instantly shouts, 4, without needing to think. But if I ask you, what's 27 times 14? System 1 taps out, and System 2 steps in, slowly breaking the problem down, piece by piece. The problem is that System 2 is lazy. It doesn't like working unless it absolutely has to. Most of the time, it hands the reins to System 1, even in situations where careful thinking would be better. For example, imagine you're hiring someone. You meet a candidate who reminds you of someone you like. So, System 1 gives them a thumbs up right away. System 2 should ideally step in and evaluate their actual skills and experience, but often it doesn't. That's how snap judgments can lead us astray. System 1 and System 2 are constantly at work, often in ways you don't even notice. For instance, when you're driving on an empty road, System 1 takes care of everything, keeping the car straight, noticing the occasional sign, while your mind drifts. But the moment another car suddenly swerves into your lane, System 1 screams for help, and System 2 takes over, deciding how to respond. Here's another way to think about it. System 1 is like a reactive, fast-thinking firefighter, quick to act in an emergency, while System 2 is the meticulous architect, planning and problem-solving with precision. Both systems are essential, but each has its strengths and weaknesses. The trouble comes when System 1 tries to handle tasks it's not equipped for, like evaluating risks, handling uncertainty, or making financial decisions. It jumps to conclusions based on incomplete information, leading to biases and errors. System 2, on the other hand, has the power to override System 1. But because it's slow and energy-intensive, it often doesn't bother unless it's absolutely necessary. The interplay between these two systems affects everything, from how you spend your money to how you vote in elections. Kahneman's insight is this. By understanding how these systems work, you can start to spot when System 1 is steering you wrong and learn to engage System 2 when it really matters. Ultimately, System 1 keeps your life running smoothly, while System 2 steps in when you need to solve complex problems. Knowing when to trust each system and when to question them is the key to better thinking and decision-making. Part 2. Cognitive biases and heuristics. Now that we know about System 1 and System 2, let's dive into the shortcuts our brain takes and how they can trip us up. These shortcuts are called heuristics, and they're mental rules of thumb that System 1 uses to make quick decisions. While heuristics can be helpful, they often lead to cognitive biases, which are systematic errors in judgment. Let's start with a classic bias, anchoring bias. This happens when we rely too heavily on the first piece of information we see, the anchor, when making decisions. For example, imagine you're shopping for a car. The first dealer shows you a car for $50,000. When another dealer offers you a car for $40,000, it feels like a bargain, even if $40,000 is still overpriced. The initial price anchored your expectations, and System 1 jumped to a conclusion without deeper analysis. Another big one is the availability heuristic. This is when we judge the likelihood of something based on how easily examples come to mind. For instance, after seeing news about a plane crash, you might feel that flying is dangerous, even though statistically, it's far safer than driving. System 1 prioritizes vivid, recent memories over hard data, leading to skewed perceptions of risk. Then there's confirmation bias, our tendency to seek out information that supports what we already believe and ignore evidence that contradicts it. Let's say you believe that a specific diet works wonders. You will likely focus on success stories and dismiss studies that suggest otherwise. This bias is System 1's way of protecting your existing beliefs, but it blocks System 2 from critically evaluating new information. Loss aversion is another key concept Kahneman explores. People hate losing more than they enjoy winning. Imagine you're offered two choices. 1, a guaranteed $50, or 2, a 50% chance to win $100. Most people go for the guaranteed $50 because the fear of losing feels stronger than the potential joy of winning. System 1 screams, don't risk it, even when the gamble might be rational. The halo effect is another sneaky bias. It's when one positive trait of a person or thing influences your overall impression. For example, if someone is attractive, you might assume they're also smart or kind, even if there's no evidence for that. System 1, ever the lazy thinker, connects the dots too quickly. These biases and heuristics are the byproducts of a brain trying to save time and energy. System 1 wants efficiency, not accuracy, which is why it takes shortcuts. While these shortcuts can be helpful in everyday life, they often lead us astray in complex situations. Understanding these cognitive biases isn't just a fun mental exercise, it's a superpower. Once you're aware of them, you can start catching yourself in the act. Ask yourself, am I jumping to conclusions because it's easy? Is this decision based on evidence, or am I falling for a bias? Engaging System 2 at the right moment can save you from costly mistakes, whether you're negotiating a salary, making an investment, or deciding who to trust. By spotting these biases in action, you can take control of your thinking and make better decisions. After all, you can't fight what you don't understand, and now you do. Part 3. The illusion of understanding. One of the most fascinating ideas in the book is the illusion of understanding. Kahneman argues that we often believe we understand the world much better than we actually do. This illusion isn't just a quirk of human psychology. It's deeply embedded in how System 1 operates. Our minds are storytelling machines. System 1 loves creating coherent narratives, even when those stories are based on incomplete or flawed information. Imagine you're watching a basketball game, and your favorite player has been on a winning streak. It's easy to assume they're in the zone, or destined to win, even though their success might be due to random factors, like weaker opponents or sheer luck. System 1 craves explanations and fills in gaps with patterns that may not exist. This tendency becomes especially dangerous when we look back at past events. After something happens, we construct neat cause and effect stories to explain it. This is called hindsight bias. For example, after a company becomes wildly successful, analysts might say, it was obvious, they had the right product at the right time. But in reality, countless other companies with similar products failed. The success story feels inevitable only in hindsight, because our brains smooth over the chaos of reality. Here's a simple thought experiment to illustrate this. Imagine flipping a coin 10 times. If it lands heads 7 times in a row, you might start to think there's a pattern, or maybe the coin is rigged. But in reality, it's just a random chance. Our brains are uncomfortable with randomness, so System 1 tries to impose order where none exists. Another aspect of the illusion of understanding is overconfidence. When we believe we understand something deeply, we're less likely to question our assumptions. Take the stock market, for example. Experts often make confident predictions about where it's headed, but research shows they're wrong as often as they're right. Yet their confidence and our willingness to believe them creates the illusion that someone really knows what's going on. The problem with this illusion is that it blinds us to uncertainty. We underestimate how complex the world is and overestimate how much control we have. Kahneman calls this the "what you see is all there is" effect. System 1 focuses on the information immediately available and ignores what's missing. For example, if you hear about a startup raising millions in funding, you might assume it's destined for success. But you're not seeing the challenges it faces, the competitors in the market, or the mistakes it's made. This illusion also affects our decision-making. Consider the planning fallacy, a bias where people underestimate how long a task will take or how much it will cost. Say you decide to renovate your kitchen. You estimate it'll take 2 months and $10,000. 6 months and $20,000 later, you're still not done. Why? Because you ignored uncertainties, unexpected delays, and hidden costs. Your brain constructed a neat, over-optimistic story instead of accounting for the messy reality. Kahneman suggests that breaking free from the illusion of understanding starts with humility. Acknowledge that the world is more random and unpredictable than it seems. Ask yourself, what information am I missing? Could chance or luck play a bigger role than I think? Am I being overconfident in my ability to predict outcomes? By questioning your assumptions and embracing uncertainty, you can make better decisions and avoid falling for overly simple explanations. Here's the key takeaway. Our brains are wired to seek understanding, but sometimes that understanding is an illusion. The world is full of complexity, randomness, and uncertainty. Recognizing this doesn't mean you stop trying to make sense of things. It just means you approach them with a little more skepticism and a lot less certainty. Part 4. The Two Selves. Another thought-provoking concept in the book is the idea of the two selves. Daniel Kahneman explains that we all have two distinct perspectives when it comes to experiencing and remembering events: the experiencing self and the remembering self. These two selves don't always agree on what matters, and that disconnect shapes how we make decisions about our lives. Let's start with the experiencing self. This is the part of you that lives in the moment. It's the self that reacts to how things feel right now. Whether you're enjoying a meal, feeling the warmth of the sun, or enduring a stressful workday, the experiencing self measures happiness in real time. For example, if you're at a concert and the music is amazing, your experiencing self is having a great time. Now, let's meet the remembering self. This is the storyteller in your mind. It looks back on events and decides how you'll remember them. Unlike the experiencing self, which lives only in the present, the remembering self creates narratives about the past. But it doesn't weigh every moment equally. Instead, it focuses on two things. 1. The peak of the experience, the most intense moment, whether good or bad. 2. The end of the experience, how it concludes. This leads to what Kahneman calls the peak end rule. For example, imagine you're on a vacation. Most of the trip is relaxing and enjoyable. But on the last day, you miss your flight and end up spending hours stranded at the airport. Your remembering self might label the entire vacation as stressful, even though most of it was great. The conflict between these two selves can have surprising consequences. Take a medical procedure as another example. If the procedure is painful but ends with a sudden sharp relief, your remembering self might think it wasn't so bad. But if the pain gradually eases off, even if the total discomfort is less, your remembering self might remember it as worse, because the ending wasn't as distinct. This disconnect shapes how we make choices, often in irrational ways. Kahneman explains that when we plan experiences like vacations, weddings, or even how we spend a weekend, we often prioritize what our remembering self will enjoy rather than what our experiencing self might prefer. For instance, we might pack our schedule with activities to make the trip memorable, even if it leaves us too exhausted to enjoy the moment. Here's another interesting implication. Money can influence these two selves differently. The experiencing self benefits from small daily comforts, like a good cup of coffee or a cozy place to live. The remembering self, on the other hand, values standout experiences, like buying a dream car or taking a luxury vacation. If you're not careful, you might spend too much on things that impress your remembering self, while neglecting what makes your experiencing self happy on a day-to-day basis. Kahneman also points out that we often let our remembering self dominate big life decisions. For example, when choosing a career, we might focus on how proud we'll feel looking back at our achievements, even if the work itself doesn't make us happy in the moment. Similarly, when deciding whether to attend a long event or celebration, we might say yes because we think we'll enjoy the memory, even if the event itself feels boring or stressful. So, how do you balance these two selves? Kahneman suggests becoming aware of their differences. Ask yourself, Am I prioritizing the present experience or the memory I'll create? Would my experiencing self enjoy this? Or am I just trying to impress my remembering self? Can I focus more on creating enjoyable moments rather than just peaks and endings? The goal isn't to ignore oneself in favor of the other. It's to find a balance. After all, your experiencing self lives in the moment, but your remembering self writes the story you'll carry with you. By understanding their conflict, you can make choices that satisfy both, creating a life that feels good in real time and looks just as good in hindsight. Here's the key takeaway. Happiness isn't just about what happens to you. It's also about how you remember it. The two selves show us that living a good life means more than chasing moments of joy or crafting perfect stories. It's about learning how to honor both perspectives. Kahneman's thinking, fast and slow, is packed with insights. But how do you actually apply them in everyday life? Here are some practical takeaways to help you think better, make smarter decisions, and avoid common mental traps. 1. Be mindful of System 1's snap judgments. System 1 is fast and efficient, but it's also prone to mistakes. Start by questioning your gut reactions, especially in high-stakes situations. If something feels obvious or certain, pause and ask yourself if System 2 should step in. For example, before making a big purchase, consider whether System 1 is being swayed by an emotional sales pitch or a flashy discount. When judging someone, ask if you're relying on a superficial first impression. 2. Engage System 2 when it matters. System 2 requires effort, but it's your best tool for complex decisions. Train yourself to slow down and think critically. When faced with financial decisions, don't trust your intuition when investing or budgeting. Take time to analyze the facts. When faced with long-term planning, use System 2 to weigh the pros and cons and consider future consequences. A simple trick is to sleep on it. Delaying your decision gives System 2 more time to process. 3. Watch out for cognitive biases. Awareness of biases is the first step to avoiding them. Here are a few strategies. Anchoring bias. Set your own benchmarks before someone else anchors you. For example, research fair prices before negotiating a deal. Availability heuristic. Don't let recent or dramatic events cloud your judgment. Look for actual data instead of relying on what comes to mind first. Confirmation bias. Seek out opinions and evidence that challenge your beliefs. It's uncomfortable, but it's how you grow. 4. Embrace uncertainty. Life is unpredictable, and the illusion of understanding can lead to overconfidence. Accepting uncertainty helps you stay flexible and make better choices. Plan for the unexpected. Whether it's a project timeline or a financial goal, add a buffer for surprises. Ask better questions. Instead of asking, "What will happen?" ask, "What could happen?" 5. Balance the two selves. To improve your well-being, consider the needs of both your experiencing self and remembering self. For the experiencing self, focus on small daily pleasures that make life enjoyable in the moment. A good meal, quality sleep, or a walk outside can make a big difference. For the remembering self, invest in meaningful experiences with strong peaks and positive endings. For example, plan vacations or celebrations that leave lasting, joyful memories. 6. Make better choices by slowing down. System 1 loves shortcuts, but when you're making big decisions, take your time. Ask yourself, am I reacting emotionally or am I thinking logically? What am I not seeing or considering? Is this decision based on facts or assumptions? 7. Use the peak end rule to your advantage. Since your remembering self focuses on the peak and the end of an experience, you can apply this rule intentionally. When creating memories, end experiences on a high note. For example, finish a dinner party with dessert everyone loves, or end a workout with an activity you enjoy. Reflect on the most significant moments of an event rather than focusing on minor inconveniences. 8. Don't rely too much on intuition. Intuition is powerful, but not always accurate, especially in unfamiliar situations. Kahneman emphasizes the importance of expert intuition, which develops only after years of practice in a specific field. If you're not an expert, don't assume your instincts will guide you correctly. Instead, gather information and make decisions based on evidence. 9. Improve your decision-making environment. Sometimes, small changes in how you frame decisions can make a big difference. Remove distractions. A calm, focused mind is better equipped to engage System 2. Reframe the question. Instead of asking, "What should I do?" try, "What would I advise a friend in this situation?" This distance helps reduce bias. 10. Cultivate a habit of reflection. Regularly reflect on your decisions and thought processes. Ask, did I fall into any cognitive traps? Was I influenced by biases or shortcuts? How can I improve next time? Over time, this habit strengthens your ability to recognize when System 1 is steering you wrong and helps you engage System 2 more effectively. By applying these lessons, you can navigate life's challenges with more clarity and less regret. Kahneman's work isn't just a guide to understanding your mind. It's a tool for living smarter, happier, and more intentional lives. Thanks for joining me on this journey through thinking fast and slow. If you found these ideas helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more books that challenge the way we think and live. Together, we'll keep exploring the most fascinating ideas from the greatest minds. See you in the next one.